In this video, we are going to explore about the figurative language. Have you ever heard someone say, "My brother eats like a horse," or "time is money," or maybe "the wind whispered through the trees"? Now, let me ask you something. Can the wind actually whisper? Can time actually become money? Can someone literally eat like a horse? Of course not. Yet, millions of people use these expressions every single day. So, why do we say things that aren't literally true? That's exactly what we are going to explore today. So, by the end of this video, you will understand what figurative language is, why writers, speakers, and even songwriters love using it. And you will learn five of the most important types of figurative language. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, what do you mean by figurative language? Let's begin with a simple question. What does the word figurative actually mean? The word figurative comes from the word figure, which refers to an image or representation rather than something literal. Okay? Let's understand this with an example. Imagine your friend says, "I'm so hungry, I could eat a mountain." Pause for a second. Can anyone actually eat a mountain? No. So, is your friend lying? No. They are simply trying to express a very strong feeling. Instead of saying, "I'm very hungry," they say, "I could eat a mountain." That makes the sentence more dramatic, more interesting, and much more memorable. And that's exactly what figurative language does. So, figurative language is the use of words or expressions that go beyond their literal meaning in order to create vivid images, express emotions, emphasize ideas, or make communication more creative and engaging. Notice one important phrase in the definition, like what I told, beyond the literal meaning. So, literal language tells exactly what happened, right? But figurative language helps the reader imagine, feel, experience what happened. Now, let's compare. The example, if you're saying the classroom was noisy, okay? In the figurative language, the classroom was a buzzing beehive. Which sentence creates a stronger picture in your mind? Definitely the second one, because your brain immediately imagines bees flying everywhere. That's the power of figurative language. And you need to understand, why do we use figurative language? You might wonder, if literal language is easier, why do writers use figurative language at all? Great question. There are several reasons. First, it creates images in the reader's mind. Instead of simply saying the girl was fast, you could say she ran like lightning. Instantly imagine the speed, right? Second, it expresses emotions more effectively. Instead of saying he was sad, you could write his heart felt as heavy as stone. Now, the reader does not just understand sadness, they almost feel it, right? And third, it makes writing more interesting. Think about your favorite songs, think about famous poems, think about movie dialogues. They are filled with figurative language because it makes language memorable. Got it? And finally, it helps writers explain difficult ideas using familiar images. That's why authors, journalists, teachers, politicians, and even everyday people use figurative language. So, we are just going to see the five important types of figurative language. The first one is simile. A simile means it compares two different things using the words like or as. Think of similes as making a comparison with a visible bridge. That bridge is usually the word like or as. For example, she sings like an angel. He was as brave as a lion, as cold as ice, as busy as a bee, as light as a feather, like a fish out of water, like a shining star. So these are some of the examples. So if you see here, she sings like an angel. Is she really an angel? No, the speaker is comparing her beautiful voice to an angel's voice. And if you see, he was brave as a lion. Does that mean he has a mane and four legs? Of course not. It simply means it simply means he is very brave, right? So this simile, it contains like or as. That's your biggest clue. Okay. And the second type is metaphor. Now, let's remove that bridge. So instead of saying she's like a star, we simply say she's a star. That's a metaphor. So, metaphor means it directly compares two different things without using the words like or as. For example, time is money. Is time actually money? No. Both are valuable. Another example, books are windows to the world. Books are not real windows, but they help us see new ideas, cultures, and experiences. And if you're saying like the classroom was a zoo, was there really a tiger inside? Probably not. So the writer means it was noisy and chaotic. So metaphors are stronger than simile because they make direct comparisons instead of saying something is merely like something else. So in metaphor, we don't use like or as. We just do the direct comparison. Okay. And the third one is personification. Now imagine walking through a forest. The leaves dance, the flowers smile, the wind whispers. Can any of these actually happen? No. This is called personification. So it means giving human qualities to animals, objects, or ideas. Here are some of the examples. The sun smiled at us. The stars danced across the sky. The alarm clock screamed at me. Opportunity knocked on the door. So writers use personification because it brings descriptions to life. Instead of describing nature as something ordinary, it suddenly feels alive, right? That's why we use personification. And the type 4 that we are going to see is the idioms. So here's where many English learners become confused. Imagine someone tells you, break a leg. Would you call a doctor? Hopefully not, because they are actually wishing you good luck. That's an idiom. So, idiom means it's a phrase whose meaning is different from the literal meaning of the individual words. Okay, if you just combine the individual words and try to identify the meaning, then you probably will not get it because it is actually different from the literal meaning. For example, break a leg, good luck. Hit the books, study hard. Once in a blue moon, very rarely. Spill the beans, reveal the secret. Piece of cake, very easy. So, this is why translating English word by word often doesn't work. So, idioms must be understood as a complete expressions, okay? And the last type we call it as oxymoron. This one combines two opposite or contradictory words to create a new meaning. For example, deafening silence, bittersweet, pretty ugly, clearly confused, seriously funny, living dead. At first, these expressions sound impossible. How can silence be deafening? Because the silence feels so intense that it's almost loud. How can something be bittersweet? Because it brings happiness and sadness at the same time. Writers use oxymorons to express complex emotions and situations that cannot be described with a single ordinary word. Okay, so whenever you read a sentence, you have to ask yourself three questions. First, does the sentence make literal sense? If not, it may contain figurative language. Second, is the writer comparing two things? If yes, you have to look for a simile or metaphor. Third, is something non human behaving like a person? If yes, it's probably personification. Is the meaning different from the actual words? Then it could be an idiom. Or opposite words placed together? That's likely an oxymoron. So today we'll learn that figurative language is much more than fancy vocabulary. It's a powerful way to make language colorful, emotional, memorable, and imaginative. So try to apply these words in your real life conversations and feel happy. That's all for today's video. Kindly like, share, and subscribe for more English tips. See you in the next video. Bye bye.